Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors lose their fourth straight, this time to the Phoenix Suns 113-105 at Footprint Center on Saturday. If you're in the chat, then let me know what your thoughts were on the game, this current Warriors form, which has been so disappointing after such a bright start. I want to preface my comments because clearly after a loss, much of this is going to be negative. And I do want to preface by saying that this was always going to come, right? You have an 82-game regular season. You are bound to lose some games in a row and have a bad stretch of form. You're probably going to have it multiple times throughout a season. So we have to expect and have to acknowledge that this was always going to be the case at some point throughout the season. As much as we don't want it to happen, we don't want 3-4 game losing streaks. Like, it's going to happen. But at the same time, all I can do, all we can do as fans, is analyze what's in front of us. And what was in front of us in this one was incredibly disappointing, especially in the first half, where the defense that's as bad a half of defense that I've seen the Warriors play all season. It was just completely lackluster, no energy, intensity. The Suns just getting whatever they wanted, particularly from three, whether it was driving kick opportunities, whether it was poorly timed double teams on Booker and KD that allowed a lot of their shooters to be wide open. Like, they went 14 of 21 from 3-point range, and you'd think, oh yeah, like that's just a hot shooting half, 66.7%. They just got hot. Yes, that is obviously the case to a degree, but they're also just wide open on a lot of them. It was just horrific Warrior defense on a lot of these plays, and that was awful. That was awful defense, and I hope Steve let rip at them at halftime, and he clearly changed things up, and we'll get into the rotation and lineups. But Steve was trying everything, exhausted all options in the first half to try and navigate his way around that barrage of Phoenix threes that led them to 66 first half points and a 17-point lead over the Warriors, who, for as lackluster as they were defensively, they were almost very similar on the offensive end. Pods had 8 first quarter points. Wiggins had, I think, 11 first half points. And aside from that, the Warriors only put up 49. They only put up 105 for the game. In today's day and age of NBA basketball, you're not going to win too many games with 105 points. And after a strong opening, first 15 games, Warriors are 12-3, and we look at the depth and we think, yeah, this is a squad. You can get guys scoring double-digit points all across the roster. While that still remains, I think the lack of a second star, a lack of another go-to guy, a lack of someone who can score you 20-plus points on a consistent basis, that's starting to bear fruit a little bit here and become an issue for the Warriors. So I don't know. It's just a rough game. They tried in the second half. They were far more competitive. Steve goes to Kevon Looney to start the second half in place of Trace Jackson-Davis. I thought, weirdly enough, I thought TJD was actually pretty active in his first stint in the first half. But his form in general has really tapered off. He's had a poor second season. There's no other way to put it. He's had a poor second season. He played less than 4 minutes the other day in Wednesday's loss to the Thunder, albeit that matchup doesn't particularly suit him necessarily, but he plays, he did play 16 minutes, to be fair, here. Sorry, no, he didn't. That's wrong. I'm looking at Phoenix. I'm looking at Mason Plumlee. He played 15 minutes. Trace Jackson-Davis went 1 of 5, 2.6 rebounds. Yep, they went to Loon in the second half, and to be fair, got an immediate result. The Warriors went on a 7-0 run, cut it to 10, really had control of the third quarter, cut it to 7 at the end of the third, and then most frustrating was the fact that there was that delay at the end of the third quarter where the refs actually went back. I didn't know you could actually do this, but the refs went back and awarded 2 free throws for Grayson Allen when the Suns apparently should have been in the bonus, and instead of going to the line, they took it side out, which meant that Grayson Allen came out, started the fourth quarter, and just nailed 2 free throws to extend the margin by 2 without actually any time going off the clock. Buddy Hield, I think, made a tough 3 with just over 8 minutes to go, and the margin was still 7. And you think, okay, if the Warriors are good enough here, they've been able to slightly manage the non-Steph minutes, get Steph back in, and maybe your chance. And then all of a sudden, Phoenix go on a 10-0 run extended back to 17, and the game's pretty much done and dusted from there. The Warriors, I mean, it was even more disappointing, I suppose, that they actually really lifted their intensity and pressure in the final few minutes, forced Phoenix into a couple of mistakes, a couple of turnovers, 1 8-second violation where they were pretty lackadaisical. So the Warriors probably made it look a bit better and made it a bit tighter in the final 60, 90 seconds than what it ultimately was. I actually think like this 8-point defeat, I don't know, it felt worse than that. I actually think that might look good for the Warriors based on this game. Like I think in another day, like the way Phoenix played compared to the Warriors, I thought the 8-point margin probably flattered Golden State a little bit, and perhaps it should have been more so like 12, 15. And again, the Warriors, a bit of a fake comeback there at the end, made it look a bit better than what it actually was. GSW says, yeah, I don't like that they did that Kuminga foul because they thought he had a foul to give. Yeah, that's the interesting one. So if they've got it, we're going back to the foul here late in the third quarter on Grayson Allen. Was from on Kuminga, and Grayson Allen went to the free throw line at the start of the fourth quarter for it. That's a good point you make. So what did the scoreboard say? Because if Kuminga thinks he's got a foul to give, then he's not really necessarily going to care about fouling Grayson Allen in that scenario. But if obviously you can see that, hey, they're in the bonus, then that's obviously just Kuminga's fault and that's a mistake and that's that. But again, if it's not, if he thinks he's got a foul to give, then I don't really like going back and retrospectively awarding 2 free throws for a situation that the player didn't know about. I don't know. I don't particularly like that, but I mean, it is what it is. It didn't make a difference in the game. It's not as if the Warriors lost by 2 points and we can really focus on that. I think they were outplayed. That situation, those 2 free throws, it's annoying. It maybe halted momentum a little bit, and maybe you could try and point at that. But to me, it didn't really make too much of a difference. The Warriors were just outplayed on both ends of the floor. And I think a lot of the off-season aspects here that we thought were going to be issues for the Warriors have started to become so. I think clearly the lack of a second star, a lack of a second go-to guy, even if you want to put Wiggins in that situation, like Wiggins is playing well at the moment. He has another 18 points, not overly efficient, 7 of 17, 4 of 9 from 3 is good. Like he was reasonable. And he's been good. I think it's like 6 games in a row now, maybe with 16 or more points. Like he's playing well, Andrew Wiggins. But Steph, there's too much of a burden on him. He's clearly affected by the knee issue. He had, I think, 1 made field goal in the first half. Really looked like he was not laboring, but just not Steph Curry, not the Steph Curry we're accustomed to. And the second half, he got going a bit. He finished with 23 points, but it took 21 shots. It was hard work for him. And he's going to face a lot of defenses which are just throwing bodies at him. And they don't have, like, at least with Phoenix, you've got KD and Booker, right? 2 guys. And, I mean, Bill was out of this game. You've also got him when he's available as well. And they're just drawing so much attention that's leaving everyone open. Like, if you look at this from a Suns offense perspective, Booker and KD combined to go 15 of 40 from the floor. Like, they were not overly efficient whatsoever. The Warriors actually did pretty well in containing those 2 guys. KD went 7 of 20, 3 of 8 from 3, and Booker went 8 of 20. They were 15 of 40 from the field, 6 of 16 from three-point range combined. But it was all the ill-advised double teams in the first half, not pressuring those guys enough to try and force turnovers if you are going to double team. The drive and kick situations. Grayson Allen, Tyus Jones, Royce O'Neal, Monte Morris combined to go 12 of 18 from three-point range, I believe it was. Allen goes 3 of 6. Tyus Jones goes 4 of 5. O'Neal 3 of 4. Monte Morris 2 of 3. That just kills you. And we've seen that. We've seen that with the Warrior defense where they take a risk and say, okay, we are going to try and double and put pressure on the opposing star players and make the role players beat us. And sometimes it works for them, sometimes it doesn't. I'm like going back to their first loss of the season against the Clippers. That was really a tactic where they kept Harden relatively quiet. But a guy like Derek Jones Jr. I think had 18 points. Zubac had 23 points. Like these things, this is kind of how the Warriors play, and sometimes it'll work for them, and sometimes it just won't. A few comments, sorry guys, here. GSO says, I mean, with the late run, it would have been a 2-point game at one point. Yeah, possibly. Again, I mean, we can argue about what that meant, that those free throws to Allen, but I just don't want to get into it. It sounds. I know if I was if I was a Suns fan and listening to me right now and I was complaining about that, it'd probably just sound like sour grapes, and I don't want to do that. Like, I want to give credit to Phoenix. They were just a better team on the night. I think there's no doubt about that. I'm just going to go V Ghost here. That's not how it's pronounced. But anyway, I don't like Pod starting. I think we need a two-way scorer next to Steph in the backcourt to keep the defense on their toes. And there are too many connector pieces on the floor at once. And they can't all start, basically, is what he or she is saying there. I actually thought Potts played well. I thought it was one of his better games, which is interesting because I agree with you. Like, they need a two-way scorer. I don't think it necessarily needs to be a two-way scorer. Ideally, it would be, but I'm sorry, Melton was just perfect. And there's no coincidence here that Melton's gone out of the lineup and the Warriors are 3-5 in the 8 games he's missed since. It just, there's no, like, I don't know. I said it at the time. I'll say it again. We don't understand how much, well, we do now, but I said at the time when that was diagnosed as a season-ending injury, I said, I don't think people understand how big of a loss this is, because he was the perfect starter next to Steph to provide impact on both ends of the floor. And the Warriors just don't have someone to be able to provide anywhere near that level of two-way impact. It's really disappointing, and I don't know what they're going to do with it moving forward. I actually think Pods might be their best option. The only issue with that is Pat Spencer. I know he played well the other night against the Thunder, brought some energy. I'm still not sure he should be playing in the rotation. And if you're going to start Pods alongside Steph, then that brings Pat Spencer into the equation, and I don't know if I want that, to be totally honest. Berserk Monk says, yeah, lack of a second star really showed tonight. Steph didn't play well at all tonight, couldn't get in rhythm early enough. I mean, the lack of a second star has been an issue over this entire losing streak, particularly in these close games down the stretch against, I mean, this game was semi-close, I guess, but more so the 3 previous ones where the Warriors could have really won those games. I think they were outplayed in this game. The previous 3, San Antonio, Brooklyn, and OKC, I think they could have won all 3 of those games. Right? In a different world, the Warriors have actually gone 3-1 in this 4-game stretch instead of being on a 4-game losing streak. And I think during those games down the stretch, the Warrior offense has really struggled in fourth quarters, and that's where a second go-to guy, a second star scorer would be incredibly helpful. And again, there's a game like this, there's just too much pressure on Steph. So that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue coming into the season, was like, can this team be good enough to get away with not having a second star? Can the depth be enough? And it was throughout the first 15 games, but it's starting to rear its head over the last 3 or 4 here. Berserk, I'm just going to spell this out. VGHXST says, I would like Moody to start the 2, get a rhythm and be enabled as a scorer in the starting lineup, because the Pods with Steph and Dre and TJD is so predictable as in the offense, making it that much harder. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm just not sure Steve sees Moses as the option. He played less than 3 minutes in the first half, and that was it. Didn't play at all in the second half. Moses Moody finished, 2 minutes, 46 seconds, took 1 3-point attempt, missed it, was a -5 in his 2 minutes and 46 seconds. Steve went 13 deep in the first half. We've been getting on him for this 12-man rotation. He goes to 13. And a lot of the starters still played. So Pods plays 33, Steph 32.5, Draymond 30.5, Wiggins 33.5, TJD 14.57. Then off the bench, Peyton 12 minutes, 17 seconds. You could forgive me for not actually realizing he was out there. He didn't have any impact. Healed 16 minutes, 25. Kuminga 19 minutes, but he played like the last 7, I think it was. And at one point, it looked like Kuminga and Moody, who are your 4th-year lottery picks, were going to play a combined less than 15 minutes. And if that was the case, that would have been a huge talking point, because at what stage, like, I don't know, I look at this game and I'm not entirely joyed by the fact that 2 4th-year lottery picks, Kuminga and Moody, saw less playing time and were really outplayed by a pair of Phoenix rookies who were both, in the case of Ryan Dunn, was a late first-round pick and Iguodala was a second-round pick. and they outplayed 2 fourth-year lottery picks from the Warriors. That's not good. to put it mildly. That's just not good. That's a problem. Real problem. And it makes you wonder, like, why are those guys still on the roster if they're going to play, if Moody's going to play 2 minutes and 46 seconds and Kuminga's going to play 19, and a lot of those came late when the Warriors needed some quick offense. And he provided that to a degree. He did have 12 points, but I don't know. We'll get into a few more comments here, and then I've got some more stuff that I'd like to get to. Berserk Monk said, Moody just had too many mistakes back to back. I knew he was going to get pulled, not return. Yeah, I agree with you. Drew said, what happened to Buddy? Buddy, and Berserk Monk says Buddy is cooled down. Okay, this leads me into another conversation. So Buddy Hield, first 10 games of the season or whatever, was absolutely unreal. Basically leading the league in bench scoring, leading the best, I think historically, the best bench of all time in scoring. And since then, he's cooled down. And as a result, the bench stinks. The bench actually stinks. It's gone from a huge strength where the Warriors had the best bench in the league to a genuine concern. Look at the plus minus in these games. Starters, Wiggins plus 12, Green plus 6, Podziemski plus 5, Curry plus 4, right? So the starters, who all play in excess of 30 and a half minutes, are all in the positives. In the minutes they're off the floor, which we have to say is, those guys all play between 30 and a half and 33 and a half minutes. Look at the bench. Payton, minus 14 in 12 minutes. Hield, minus 15 in 16 and a half minutes. Kuminga, minus 14 in 19 minutes. Spencer, minus 8 in 8.5 minutes. Moody, minus 5 in 2.5. Anderson only played 7 minutes, minus 3. Waters, minus 6 in 13.5 nearly. Looney, the only one there in a positive. And that's because he actually started the second half with the starters. He was a plus 1, 9.6 rebounds in 16 minutes. I don't know. What do we like? That bench is sucking at the moment. There's no other way to put it. It's not good. We're going back to what's been an issue where the reliance on Steph is too much, and not just Steph, but like Draymond and Wiggs as well as the veteran guys. This has been a thing now over not just this losing streak, but a little bit longer than that, is that the plus minus, if you look at the plus minus over the last 10 games, Wiggs, Steph, Draymond, all excellent. The bench guys, not good. Not good at all. VGH, I'm just going to say Ghost. I'm going to call you Ghost because I don't want to spell it out. He should be allowed to play through mistakes just about as anyone. That's in relation to Moody. I'm not saying Pods played bad either. It's just a systematic issue with Steve's offense. No, I agree with you. I'm not sure Pods is the long-term option, particularly if you want him as the backup point, because the Spencer thing was fun on Wednesday against the Thunder. I'm not sure it's actually sustainable, and it didn't really prove sustainable in this one. I think he had one nice feed to Looney for an assist at one point, and that was about it. He's not a scoring threat. He's not a great defender. What's he doing out there? Just doing a bit of cardio. I don't know. It was nice on Wednesday night for 14 and a half minutes, but truly, I don't particularly love it. Jesto says Moody, Melton in 2 seconds for Vucevic. Again, the Moody stuff, I'm not sure if that's not exactly viable, I don't think, because the outgoing salary for Moody is like $5.6 million. So it's not quite viable, I think, because the Warriors are only $500,000 above the first apron. But it could certainly be Moody, Payton, and 2 seconds of Vucevic, which is on the podcast episode yesterday. I proposed that trade, which was Melton, Payton, and 2 seconds for Vucevic and Torrey Craig. I don't know. The lack of spacing out here when there's Pods and Pods hit 2 of 4 today, but he was allowed to. The guy's shooting 20% on the year. Opposing teams know that. They'll leave him. Again, the spacing issues and what the impact that is on like Steph and Wiggs when you've got 3 guys out there who teams aren't going to guard from beyond the perimeter. You just can't do that in the current NBA. You just cannot do it. And so if you get Vucevic out there and he's your starting center and he's shooting 45% from 3 this season on over 4 attempts, and all of a sudden what you're doing at the 2 guard spot, you could actually start Pods if you want. You could actually start Kuminga if you wanted to, because it allows you, it gives you so much more opportunity to do different lineups and different combinations when you got a guy out there who teams have to guard, who is actually going to put the ball in the basket as opposed to TJD and Loon. And Loon's been good. Loon played well today, and I think that was probably the right move from Steve to put him in the starting lineup. I'm not sure if that's going to continue. Again, if that continues, I don't feel optimistic about where this team can go if Draymond and Loon are the front court combination again. I just don't. Just trying to get through some more comments here. GSW, Warriors have a tough upcoming schedule. I see us around 9th, 10th seed after it. Very possible. As unfortunate as it is, being realistic, it's an incredibly tough schedule. Maybe we can win the NBA Cup. I don't want to be that pessimistic. Look, they played bad today, and they still only lost by 8, and they were kind of in the game for a bit in the second half, and they didn't play they were awful in the first half. So if you look at that, and you look at the fact they had 17 and 18-point leads against the Spurs and the Nets, and if they had a half-competent offense on Wednesday against the Thunder in the final 5-6 minutes, like, you can look at all those things, and the glass is still half full to a degree. It's not all doom and gloom. They're still 12-7. This, as I said at the start, like, these bad stretches are always going to happen. It's about just bouncing out of it as quickly as possible and not letting it extend to losing 6 games in a row or 8 in 10 kind of thing. And that's where you becomes really problematic in an incredibly competitive Western Conference. Drew says, to be honest, Kyle needs more minutes. I don't know. He's becoming a little bit of not a whipping boy. Moody's the whipping boy. We know he's the whipping boy of Steve Kerr, but Slow-Mo, he just has games where he plays less than 10 minutes sometimes, and then you just don't see him for entire periods. And I don't know. It's tough because when he plays, he usually plays pretty well. But again, he's like another connecting piece. He's not putting his hand up and scoring 10 points in 5 minutes and screaming, I need to play more. Tough. Berserk Monk says the fact that the Suns have 3 stars, or maybe you could argue Beal isn't a star anymore. Their bench is thinner than ours, but their bench outplayed ours. Yeah. And in fairness, like, their bench always includes one of Booker or KD. Like, one of those guys are always on the floor, and that's the other beneficiary of having a second star. Is that, yes, you might not have the bench depth, but you're always going to have a star on the floor. And some of the Warrior offense, when Steph is off the floor and if Wiggins is off the floor at the same time, we're starting to run stuff through Kuminga, and the Kuminga stuff is incredibly up and down. He's like 4 of 12 today. I thought he played okay against the Thunder in his return on Wednesday, but it was inefficient. I don't know. Like, it's rough. It's rough. And that's what a second star allows you. And in the case of the Suns, they have 3 to an extent. Like, if Beal is leading a second unit, that's obviously a great situation to have. Go says, that's why I think Pods needs to come off the bench and bring that same energy every time Steph comes off the floor. And yes, no more Pat, only garbage time, please. I think most Warrior fans would agree with that. As much as we might have, I don't know, found the Pat Spencer minutes fun the other night against the Thunder, I'm not sure they're minutes we want to see too often. Go says, go Milton for Lonzo. Well, Lonzo's still on like 20 mil. And so I actually think a fit Lonzo Ball would be terrific next to Steph. Terrific, because he's really similar to Melton in terms of he can play on and off the ball. He's probably better on the ball than Melton is as a creator, as a ball handler and stuff. And then at his best, like, he can play off the ball and he can be a catch and shoot threat. He shot 40% from 3. Obviously a really good on-ball defender as well. Like, he's very similar to Melton. The only issue is the injuries. Like, I mean, you just can't trust that, can you? I don't know if Chicago want to tear it down and he's bought out come the just after the deadline or something, then great. But why would he necessarily pick the Warriors in that situation? I don't know. I don't see the Warriors trading for him. Let's put it that way. Berserk Monk says Vooch is an Iron Man, no injury concern with him. Yeah, that's also true. I mean, part of the reason he's an Iron Man is because the guy's never made the playoffs. Like, he's made the playoffs, I think, twice in his career. It's actually, and I shouldn't laugh because I think that's actually concerning. The fact that this guy is a 2-time All-Star, I'm just looking it up right now. He has made the playoffs. So he's a 13-year veteran. He's made the playoffs. He's made the playoffs 3 times and he's never been past. 4 times. He's never been past the first round. He made it in his rookie year with the 76ers, I think that is. Yes, rookie year with the 76ers, twice with the Magic where they were eliminated in 5 games, and then 21-22 with the Bulls where they were eliminated in 5 games. Not a great playoff history for Nikola Vucevic, and I don't know if that says something about his ability, to be totally honest, and whether you'd actually want to trade for him or not. But I still, when I read, and again, going back to the podcast episode yesterday, when I read that report from Fisher that said that one GM thinks his trade value is around 2 second-round picks, I don't know what the downside is. GSW says, please don't touch Lonzo. It's just too difficult with the injuries. Ghost says, Lonzo could be more modern-day Sean Livingston for us, low-key, but I would love to see Vooch too. Yeah, I mean, a cool comparison, that's fine, but what was Sean Livingston making in his Warrior career? Certainly not the $20 million Lonzo Ball currently is. So if you're talking about free agents during the offseason, you can get Lonzo Ball for less than $10 million. I'm all for it. I agree with you. I think he's a good fit when he's up and running and healthy, but is he ever going to be fully up and running and healthy completely? I don't know. Drew says my lineup: Steph, Wiggs, Kuminga, Dre, and Looney or TJD. So that was obviously the lineup they started with at the start of the season with Steph, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, and TJD. The lack of spacing, though. The lack of spacing is just tough. And that's why, like, if you get Vucevic in there, I love how we're just always talking about Nikola Vucevic as, you know, the hopes and prayers of the Golden State Warriors getting Nikola Vucevic. It's a little bit sad. But if you put him in there, then all of a sudden Steph, Wiggs, Kuminga, Draymond, Vucevic, that could actually work. That actually could. And then you go back to Pods in the second unit, and you've got Buddy Hield, and you've got one of Looney or TJD. At this point, I think if you got another big man, I think TJD would just be out of the rotation completely the way he's playing at the moment. Again, I thought he had a couple of nice defensive plays early, but the form overall isn't good. But yeah, if you've got Pods and you've got Moody and Buddy Hield and Looney, that's 4 guys. Anderson is 5. Like, that's the thing. The Warriors could make a 2-for-1, 3-for-1 trade, and they're still going to have a reasonable depth. Like, they're still going to have a solid 10-man rotation. They used 13 players today, for goodness sake. 13 players. GSW says it's because Vucevic is a perfect fit for us. Berserk Monk says Vooch isn't that big of a risk asset-wise if we snag him for 2 seconds, GP2 and Melton. Yep, exactly your line proposing. I said in the podcast episode yesterday, I just don't see the downside in the guy. He doesn't have, as Berserk Monk said before, he doesn't have any really injury issues or history to speak of. So, yes, he's 34. He's got 1 year after this. The only downside is that he just starts to stink it up, and you got a guy on $20 million who you can't really trade, and he's on the roster again next season. Like, that's really the only downside. It would also cost you your flexibility in the offseason because if you're trading Milton and GP2, those are both expiring contracts. And so if you trade both those guys, so Vooch, who's making $20 million again next season, then all of a sudden what you can do in free agency and your prospective options there are limited. But again, I think the Warriors can continue having reasonable depth, and maybe you can bring one or both of those guys back in free agents on close to minimum deals. Like, I just don't think Gary Payton II is going to be getting anything more than a minimum at this point in free agency. There's too much talent out there for him to be getting more than that. Milton, with this coming off an ACL injury, maybe he gets 5-6 million, but I think even that would be a stretch because he's going to start next season injured. You'd imagine. I don't think he'd be right to go at the start of next season. I don't want to forecast ahead too much, but yeah. GSO says, you reckon the Warriors are looking for Vooch or just disregarding it? I'd like to think they want to try something different and they want to try and address getting a skilled big man and more versatility in the front court. But history would suggest that it's very unlikely, and history on multiple fronts. So when you say that Vooch is a perfect fit, I don't think he's necessarily he's not a great fit for what the Warriors have done previously. They always prioritize, when you look at their big men, they always prioritize defense, rebounding, screen setting, and passing. Now, Vucevic does a couple of those things, but defensively, that's a huge hole, obviously. He just doesn't really bring that. Maybe Draymond could help a little bit in that aspect playing next to him, but clearly that's a big hole. So Vucevic is different to he's very different to Looney and TJD, and even going back to an Andrew Bogut and a Zaza Pachulia and a JaVale McGee and whoever else you want to plug in there as the Warriors centers over the past decade. Like, which centers of the Warriors had that you look at and say, oh, we're actually going to run plays through him to score the ball? Maybe DeMarcus Cousins for half a season in 2018-19. But aside from that, the Wiseman experiment, maybe, like in his rookie year, I don't know. But the Warriors, they don't look for scoring big men. They've never really had one. The last time they heavily invested in one was Wiseman, and we know how that worked out. It's probably scared them off looking for that type of player. They also, like, financially, they've currently got Looney on $8 million. I was looking it up before. Looney has not made over $8 million in any of his 10 seasons. He's always been on $8 million or less. Just not obviously getting paid a whole lot. Trace Jackson-Davis is on a 4-year, $7.6 million contract. Their only other genuine center is Quentin Post on a 2-way contract. They do not spend money on big men. They don't. They've always done it on perimeter guys and forwards. Steph, Clay, Jordan Poole, Draymond, who we still classify as a forward first and foremost, KD, obviously, Wiggins. Like, that's where their money goes. They do not spend over $10 million, let alone $20 million on a center. So between not really having history of going after offensively minded big men and not paying big men in excess of $10 million, again, let alone 20, I just don't see, like, their mindset would have to drastically shift to have interest in Nikola Vucevic. Berserk Monk says, but $20 million on his last year is an expiring contract, could be valuable to teams next year if he stinks. Possibly, like, you could, and, well, ideally he'd actually still play reasonably well to the point of, hey, we've got this guy who's pretty good. It's almost like a Wiggins situation where Wiggins at the moment is actually playing really well, right? He's playing really well and he's rehabilitated his value, okay? And it's got to the point where you wouldn't trade Wiggins for much. Like, you wouldn't, sorry, I'll start that in. You wouldn't trade Wiggins for anything less than, like, a superstar. But if that superstar becomes available, like if it's Giannis, then yeah, like you're probably going to move him, right? I wouldn't do it for a Jimmy Butler or anyone who's, you know, old and a bit injury prone and not actually that much better than Wiggs is playing right now. But if a superstar becomes available, then yes, Wiggins would still be on the table, you'd imagine. And maybe it's a similar situation with Vucevic, where you trade for Vucevic, but if a better player becomes available, then you're not really going to hesitate too much with moving that guy, right? And again, like that $20 million, if it's expiring, then that actually, again, as you said, has some value, right? Particularly, I don't know, you can change things up. You can go get another guy. I don't know. There's still some flexibility there, particularly when you're only giving up 2 second-round picks, if that's the case. I don't know. I want to try and get back to this game a little bit. I don't know if I've got too much else. We've been going for over 33 minutes. The 13-man rotation stuff that's just disgusting. That needs to end. I know what Steve, he's trying to get someone in there to fight and show some energy in the first half because the Suns were just striping every three and the Warrior defense was awful. Look, I get it. But you can't be playing 13 guys in the first half of a game. I'm sorry, you cannot do that. And so I'm looking at this. I don't know what you're going to do. I actually don't know. Like, who do you eliminate? I think Waters might have to go. Okay, fun while it lasted. He started 7 games. I was actually surprised he played. I thought he might have gone from being in the starting lineup to not playing at all. And yet he still played 13 and a half minutes. I think you got to persist with Moody. Like, again, I just don't know why Lindy Waters is playing 10, 11 minutes more than Moses Moody. We spoke about this on the last post-game live. It's just frustrating. I think you got to get rid of Spencer. I think you got to get rid of Waters. That opens up 21, 22 minutes. Give some of them to Moody. Give some of them to Kyle Anderson. If it means putting Pods back in the second unit, then maybe you go with Moody or Kuminga in the starting lineup. I don't know. It's a bit of a mess right now because there's so many different options. And when the Warriors are winning, you look at all the different options. You think, oh, great, fantastic. We've got all these guys we can play and they can come in and have short, sharp impact for us, and that's fantastic. But then when you start losing, as the Warriors are now with 4 straight defeats, it quickly becomes, oh, okay, where do you go to? Like, you got so many options, but no one's really putting their hand up and screaming out, oh, yeah, I need to start or I need to play 25 plus minutes. That's the problem. GSW says, I love Pat Spencer, but starting him in the fourth is crazy. Yeah, imagine saying that at the start of the season. Yeah, hey, cool. We're down 6 or 8 to Phoenix at Footprint Center on November 30, and Pat Spencer is going to start the fourth quarter for us at point guard. That's, you would have thought. Hey, hang on. I'll preface this by saying, imagine saying that while also saying that Steph Curry is healthy, available, and playing. Brandin Podziemski is healthy, available, and playing. Because I think in that scenario, you would say, oh, well, Steph and or Pods are both out, and that's why Pat Spencer's starting the fourth. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. This is the kind of stuff that Steve does, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and he's going to get criticized when it doesn't work. I don't know. The Warriors have some problems. They've got a problem with their starting two-guard position. They've got a problem with their starting center position. They've got to address that. I think the best way to address that is actually at the center position by getting a guy that can space the floor, whether it's Vucevic, Kelly Olynyk, someone like that. And then if you can get that guy, then that allows you, I think, to be a little bit more flexible with what you actually do at the two-guard spot, right? So I don't know. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of fires that Steve has to try and put out here. I think you got the two-guard position, you got the center position. You need your bench. Because really, as much as we talk about those two positions, the starters have actually been fine because Wiggs, Steph, and Dre are all still playing at a pretty high level. Pod's played well today. But then, the bench, you need Buddy to try and give you... he had 11 points on 3 of 7, 2 of 4, but I don't know. It's just not overly impactful. Clearly, the plus-minus says so. He was minus 15. Kuminga, you need him to be more efficient. I mean, what's Kuminga? I'm just looking this up. What's Kuminga now shooting for the season from the floor? I don't think it's overly good. Let's put it that way. For a guy who should be living downhill at the rim, the numbers aren't good. He is. I'm not sure if this is counting his game today yet. No, I think it is actually. It is counting his game today. He's 13.5 points on 43% from the floor, 29% from the three. All I can say, JK, you're not getting $150 million with those numbers, my friend. That is for sure. NVX Hunter says, Kuminga got to be traded. He isn't ready to be who the Warriors need him to be. The IQ isn't there. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree, but I'm not sure where his value is at. I don't know. He still has these stretches. He had that second and third quarter on Wednesday where you're like, holy crap. Yeah, this is the guy we need. This is the guy we want. But it's just not consistently there right now. GSW says, was the Warriors' last trade pool? They just don't seem active in looking for trades. Yeah, well, if you want to exclude the sign and trade that delivered Clay to the Mavericks and Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield, that's a free agent thing. That's not really going to count. And then if you want to include Corey Joseph going to the Pacers at last season's trade deadline for financial reasons. But yes, aside from that, you would say, yes, the pool one during the 2023 offseason would be the last one. That was a major one, to be fair. Next Fiesta says, we suck again. The wheels are off. It's very easy to be pessimistic on the back of 4 straight losses. Again, I kind of want to reiterate, as negative as this post-game live has been, I do want to reiterate, these stretches are always going to happen during an 82-game season, and you don't want to necessarily overreact to them, but at the same time, I think there's some pretty constant issues for the Warriors that we had heading into the season and that have been around the mark and kind of reared their head a little bit, even within that 12-3 start to the season. Go, Steve. Steve just trying stuff with his rotations. Yeah, he said the first 20, what did he say? The first 25, 30 games was trying stuff out essentially, and then he's going to bed down something and go to something a lot more certain. I don't know. I'm waiting to see it. Berserkman says the sad part was when we were in talks of trading for OG Anunoby. The reason we couldn't get him before he went to the Knicks was because Warriors didn't want to give up Kuminga. Yeah, I'm not sure OG Anunoby would be the answer. I'm not sure he's this I think he plays well off Brunson and Towns as a third guy, and they've got Bridges as well. But I'm not sure how much he'd be helping. And if I had to pay him 5 years, $215 million like the Knicks did, I don't love that. I don't love paying OG Anunoby $215 million. So if that's what you had to do, if you traded for him and you had to sign him to that deal for him to extend, I don't love it. NVX 100, those stretches is what provides the value. He shows little flashes where he strives. If he goes to a trash team, he can develop there, but he isn't playoff ready. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem when we're talking about a guy in his fourth year going to a trash team and developing there. Like, that's part of the problem. Is it's like it's fourth year now. Surely, if it was going to be the case, if this guy was going to be a star, we would have seen it already. Berserk Monk says kind of stuck with Kuminga. He has to increase his stock and see if we can flip him at the trade deadline if he's still wanting a max. Well, maybe we'll look back at this in 12 months and Kuminga has, not had a great season, and then all of a sudden the Warriors can re-sign him on like less than 100 mil in restricted free agency, and then he comes back, has a big off season, and starts really well next season. Who knows? Maybe it's all part of the grand plan. I don't know, but it's been a little bit disappointing with him. Like, he's still 13.5 points a game. He's still 4.1 rebounds. He's still 2.1 plus minus on the set. What is he totals? He's just decides to load. Does it want to? Kuminga is plus 35 and he's 387 minutes. So the minutes aren't a disaster for him, but it hasn't been a good season. I just look at a guy that plays the way he does, shooting 43.1% from the floor. Not ideal. Ghost says JK will be better. He had from about this point, I reckon, last season, maybe a bit further in, like the 35-40 game of last season, and then across the second half of last season, he was excellent. Really took a jump, and maybe that will be the case again, but it's almost a bit, it just doesn't really help when a guy has a breakout second half of a season, then he comes back and he's worse the start of the next season. And then if he makes that jump again, cool. But then we've just got the same guy we had the second half of last season. He hasn't actually improved. I don't know. Berserk Monk says, yeah, but I try to compare Kuminga to Wagner. I thought this game against OKC was going to be Kuminga's Wagner-like breakout to show us he's that guy. Let's just not compare those guys because otherwise we're going to – I know it's easy to do because we could have had Wagner. He was taking the pick after Kuminga. But if we keep comparing those guys, it's going to be a sad tale. We're not going to have too much of a fun time. Let's put it that way. I'm going to finish it up there. The Warriors play the Nuggets NBA Cup game. If you want some positives, the Warriors, even before this NBA Cup game on Tuesday against the Nuggets in Denver, they will be in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. So there's still that on the radar. Other than that, I'm going to finish it up. Thank you very much to those of you that have commented, or if you're tuning in on replay or listening via your podcast feed. I might be back for an episode before that game against the Nuggets. We'll see how we go. Otherwise, I'll certainly do a post-game live on Monday, I think it is. Did I say Tuesday before? It's Tuesday my time it's on. Monday, I think, American time. So anyway, I just get so confused with the time differences and stuff like that. But anyway, thanks again for those of you that have tuned in, and I'll see you either on the next podcast episode or on the next post-game live.